For a book called The Forest of Stars, there aren't that many forests or stars. A sort of cross between Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury and The Light Princess by George MacDonald, The Forest of Stars follows 12-year-old Louisa navigating the world after the passing of her mother, made more difficult by the fact that Louisa isn't an ordinary girl. She has the same untamed magic as her father, the power of weightlessness. She floats with every step, feet never touching the ground, and a gust of wind can blow her away as it did her father. But her fortunes change when she comes across the carnival under the stars. I was initially drawn to this book because I really liked the sound of the setting and the soft magic. There's just something inherently whimsical about carnivals that suits a sort of wondrous, gentle magic. But they're also just sinister enough to give stories a bit of bite and a backdrop of glitz and shade to suit any mystery. And I think Kassner pulled it off very well with the black and gold colour scheme, the names of the acts, and the nature of the magic. Speaking of, I liked that the magic was fairly soft. There are no incantations or potions, just a power inside of a small number of people that allows them to defy nature in some way. They never try to explain it, and I like that as well. I also liked the setting outside of the carnival. The town, I think, was called Plum, or some sort of fruit. And it felt quite Victorian-esque, with this, like, a factory, and soot in the air, like, there's a constant layer of ash and soot on the ground, which obviously the main characters make footprints in because she floats. There are street sellers on every pavement. I just liked the aesthetic and the sort of somewhat Victorian, but like obviously not the real world. It sort of reminded me of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Misery and greyness suddenly giving way to colour and magic. I enjoyed all of the characters. Louisa is the decent lead, with enough bravery and determination to push the plot forward, but she is also afraid and desperate and hopeful, that makes her feel like a real child looking for a place to belong in the world. The characters she meets at the carnival are fun as well, and they build up a nice friendship. There's also this guy who's like a sort of wooden cyborg, which I just thought was really cool, so if you're into that, that's there. I also enjoyed the plot. It's very small and honestly in some ways feels more like a long novella, as it didn't take much time to read, maybe a couple of hours at the most. It is a small-scale plot, but there's nothing wrong with that, especially when you have children as leads. It can be nice just to follow this little mystery that has enough stakes to build tension, but not so much that your suspension of disbelief is shattered. You never find yourself not believing that the main characters will be able to handle everything that's thrown at them. And I also think the mystery itself was handled very well. There are clues and hints scattered throughout so subtly I didn't even notice them until we came to the glimmer of the reveal and suddenly it all made sense. And in general, I think it was written pretty well with effective use of language. It's a bit simple, but it did feel like a children's book, even if I'm not totally convinced it was advertised as such. It's certainly suitable for children. So make of that what you will. The dialogue was perhaps somewhat twee at times, but I imagine this was down to Kassner trying to emulate classic children's stories like Enid Blyton or Eleanor Brent Dyer. But it only really made me pause a couple of times, so it's not really a huge issue. But one of the revelations, I suppose, does flip-flop a lot. Like, it's a yes, then it's no, then it's yes, then it's no, which did undermine one plot thread somewhat, but it did then tie into something else. So I do understand why that one thing kept flipping. I just wish there had been a way of tying it in without continuously rug pulling on what I thought was actually a fairly obvious twist. There's also no ringleader in the circus, which made it feel a bit wild, which maybe was the point. But I struggled to understand how the circus would operate without, like, an obvious person in charge. And it was a bit sad, because I would have liked to have seen a ringleader who was actually not evil, because all ringleaders are evil, from what I've seen of things about circuses, like in fiction. And And you can say what you like about P.T. Barnum in The Greatest Showman. The real P.T. Barnum was a cretin and a lout who preyed on the vulnerable of society and exploited them to line his own pockets. He was not a good guy. Let's stop pretending he was. On the whole, this is a fine book, and I'd certainly recommend it to those who enjoy children's stories, but it is suitable for adults as well. Perhaps those who like a softer magic system, the whimsy of the circus, or those interested in the faux Victorian setting would enjoy it the most, as long as you don't mind a small scale plot. Most fantasy work these days does seem to ignore for massive plots, but there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, quite a short one this week, because I did like it and it's quite a small book. I didn't enjoy the next book as much, so that'll be longer. Thanks for watching. Bye.